I knew something was off when my desk phone rang at 3:47 a.m., a time only three types of people call: dying relatives, drunk exes, or servers gasping their last breath. This time it was the third. No ringtone, no blinking light, just a ping deep and low in the system logs like a whisper from the underworld. I rolled over in bed, logged the timestamp in the notebook on my nightstand, and went back to sleep. Not panicked, not surprised, just noting the heartbeat. Still there. Next morning, I shuffled into work with my usual travel mug of bitter coffee and a Costco Danish I'd warmed on the defrost setting in the break room microwave. Nobody looked up. They never did. I was Denise from IT, the furniture ghost, someone they CC'd when the printer jammed, but forgot existed when bonus season came around. That was fine by me. I'd been here 22 years. My world was servers, legacy scripts, and systems so old they still whispered in Perl. And one of them, buried under three migrations and a firewall nobody remembered, was a little disaster recovery protocol I'd written in the early aughts. It depended on a signal that pulsed out every 6 hours from one very specific desk phone. Mine. Before I go on, quick sidebar. 97% of you who hear these stories aren't even subscribed. That means I'm spilling decades of caffeine-fueled revenge and system-level sabotage for free, and my editors over here living off gas station peanuts. So if you like watching old-school karma hit like a truck with no brakes, go ahead and tap subscribe. It fuels our petty little engines. Anyway, the signal had no label, no name in the repo, no doc string, just a line of code that said, hash remove only if you know what this does. Send a handshake every 360 minutes. If the signal stopped, it didn't do anything dramatic, no fireworks, no sirens. It just quietly escalated, slowly, like mildew in the walls. It notified systems that something was wrong, then backup systems, then the off-site shell servers. Then if all of those went unanswered, well, then it went nuclear. Not explode the building nuclear. More like delete the production image and kick in the failover data center nuclear. Designed back when fail-safes had fail-safes and nobody trusted the cloud farther than they could ping it. The only reason it still worked? Nobody touched my phone. The thing was beige. It had a curly cord that smelled like dust and hand sanitizer. I'd replaced the dial pad with a sticky note that said do not unplug. That's all it took to keep everyone away. Most days it just sat there, humming faintly like a sleeping guard dog. The new hires didn't know. Hell, half of them thought Command Line was a streaming service. But I knew, and I checked it, religiously. Not because I thought anyone would ever be dumb enough to trip it, but because people like me live in the land of worst-case scenarios. That's what we do. We build netting under the netting. We document the documentation. We are the unthanked safety buffer between a working day and a meltdown. And slowly, the office was changing. The old execs, the ones who still nodded at me in the hallway, who remembered I'd written the business continuity playbook during the 09 outage, were retiring. Replaced by buzzwords and sport jackets. They started calling everything agile and renaming departments after verbs. My team became enablement, which, as far as I could tell, meant cut costs and blame Denise when it breaks. But I kept the pulse going. Every 6 hours. No fuss. No attention. Just me and that hum in the line. Until the morning Marcus walked in, and everything started to rot, quietly, invisibly, like the pulse skipping a beat. Marcus arrived like a fart in an elevator, loud, unwelcome, and somehow smug about it. Tall in that string-bean CrossFit way, with a jaw that looked sculpted by someone who'd only seen PowerPoint avatars. His handshake was limp but aggressive, like he was trying to assert dominance while avoiding human contact. Just call me Marcus, he told the room like we were about to braid each other's hair at a sleepover. Titles build walls. Right, spoken like a guy whose LinkedIn banner says disruptor. Strategist, human. His first act as our new transformation lead, which apparently outranked every job title short of God, was to schedule a mandatory town hall at 8 a.m. sharp. Free donuts, stale coffee, and the death rattle of old systems were all on the menu. I sat in the back with my notebook closed, pen uncapped. I'd been through 5 of these before, each one a different flavor of disaster. The Y2K panic, the SharePoint migration. That time someone decided to run payroll through a beta API because it scales better. But Marcus wasn't just new. He was evangelical, like a tech bro on a mission from Bezos. He clicked to the second slide, titled Our Efficiency Mandate. Beneath it, in Comic Sans, I wish I was joking, were 4 bullet points. Reduce friction, modernize tools, automate legacy workflows, reevaluate long-tenured redundancy. I didn't flinch. I didn't need to. I felt the whole room tense around me. Long-tenured redundancy is HR for we're gonna fire the people who actually know stuff. And Marcus said it like he was announcing dessert. He went on about the burden of outdated architecture and how we needed to let go of what no longer serves us. His eyes flicked toward me, just once like a kid daring himself to touch the stovetop. I met his gaze and raised my coffee mug. He smiled, not kindly. After the meeting, I returned to my cube and opened my incident log. I started jotting down notes, not because anything had broken, but because I knew it would. Marcus had that look of someone who believed if he didn't understand it, it must be obsolete. People like him don't maintain systems. They massacre them and call it progress. By Thursday, he'd already purged 3 shared drives and deleted a scheduled job that was quietly rotating log archives. One of my junior techs asked him why. Marcus said it was flagged as legacy and had no metadata, which is MBA for, I didn't recognize it, so I killed it. I cornered him later, politely, professionally, explained that the script he deleted was the only thing preventing our audit logs from overflowing and crashing the compliance cluster. His reply, that's a process problem. We'll fix it in the next sprint. I asked if he even knew what it did before deleting it. He shrugged and said if it was important, it would have been documented in the cloud. Let me be clear, I wrote that script in 2006 on a Saturday, because the CTO called me during his kid's bar mitzvah in a panic about disk space. It had survived 6 department heads and 3 CFOs, but now it was gone, just like that. It wasn't the first system to die under a clueless knife, and it wouldn't be the last. But this time I felt something stir. Something I hadn't felt in a long time, a whisper in my gut. This one's different. This one's reckless. And he just stepped over the tripwire. It happened on a Thursday. Kind of Thursday that smells like printer toner and existential dread. Marcus had announced a floor audit which sounded like something out of a corporate dystopia, and in practice was even worse. He strutted around with a clipboard and a Bluetooth headset like he was auditioning for America's next top downsizer. Behind him waddled Kyle from procurement, pushing a giant plastic bin labeled deprecate. I knew what was coming. I'd seen it before. Monitors gone. Rolodex is trashed. One guy lost his ergonomic footrest and filed for stress leave. But I didn't move, didn't even look up when they reached my cube. I kept typing. System logs, resource thresholds, uptime ratios, just another normal day until it wasn't. Marcus peered over my monitor. Wow, he said, voice dripping with disdain, landline still plugged in. Didn't realize we were running a museum here. I didn't flinch. It serves a purpose. Sure it does. He reached down, gripped the phone cord, and before I could even stand, yank. The coil snapped loose with a tiny plasticky gasp. My breath followed right behind it. He dangled the phone like a dead mouse. We'll recycle it or send it to the Smithsonian. Maybe they can carbon date it. The IT team chuckled nervously. Kyle dropped it into the bin. It clunked against an ancient surge protector and some dusty monitor arms, and that's when everything stopped. My pulse, my breath. Time? Because it wasn't just a phone. It was the phone. The one with the quiet heartbeat signal baked into its line voltage. The one the system pinged every 6 hours to confirm the continuity of operations across 3 mirrored zones. The one tied into the root scripts of our disaster recovery shell, a Frankenstein beast built before cloud first was a buzzword, when off-site meant a bunker 2 states over with concrete walls and diesel backups. Every 6 hours, that line sent out a pulse. No pulse? The system assumed I was dead or compromised. It started escalating. Slowly, methodically, 3 silent warnings. One ping to the mirrored backup. Then it locked the failover switch in pre-init mode and waited. It waited exactly 96 hours before shifting to critical phase. After that, it would require manual override from a tokenized credential I had stored on a hardware key that now sat in a locked case in my basement. Marcus had no idea. Of course he didn't. Why would he? Nothing about that system existed in Confluence. I kept it offline, purposefully, because you don't document dead man switches where interns can click them. You don't put safety nets in the cloud when the whole point is surviving the cloud going down. I stood there, still as winter. He moved on, already digging into someone else's non-essential USB hub. Team buzzed behind him like flies chasing a corpse. Inside, something shifted. Not panic, not rage, clarity, like cold water after a blackout. I sat back down, logged into a system nobody else remembered the password to, saw the ping had missed its scheduled handshake, logged the timestamp. 11:43 a.m., Thursday, I stared at the screen. Script 1 sent, script 2 queued, script 3 scheduled plus 96H. I didn't say a word. Didn't scream, didn't argue, didn't do the thing HR thinks you're supposed to do when someone violates your workspace. I just picked up my bag, walked to the elevator, pressed the button. Waited. Behind me I heard Marcus laugh. You guys ever seen someone so attached to a landline? Nobody answered. They didn't know what he'd done, but I did. He pulled the thread. The countdown had begun. I didn't go back to my desk that day. Just walked out, got in my car, drove home with the kind of dead-eyed calm you only get after 20 years of watching men like Marcus light systems on fire and then blame the smoke on legacy bottlenecks. No one chased me, no one called, because in their eyes I was already gone. Just a quiet, middle-aged woman in orthopedic flats who knew her way around RAID arrays and wore the same cardigan on Mondays. The next morning I came in early. 6:15 a.m. Security guy didn't even look up, just buzzed me through like usual. I sat down at my cube, plugged in a borrowed Ethernet adapter, and did the one thing I'd never done in 22 years. I downloaded my exit. One encrypted drive, one encrypted key file. All of it zipped and transferred to a USB I wore around my neck, hidden in plain sight under a lanyard that said Cat Mom, Code Queen. I wiped my laptop clean. Didn't even leave a snarky note. Just a sticky that read, System retired. Questions? Ask the cloud. Then I grabbed my plant, dead for 6 months but kept around for nostalgia and my last few notebooks, left the coffee mug, left the half stash of Twizzlers, walked out without swiping my badge one final time, let the exit sensor beep uselessly behind me. I drove past the city line, past the Starbucks I used to hit every Thursday, and kept going another 23 miles until I hit the storage unit off County Route 7, pulled into the gravel lot, entered the PIN. Door hash 119 creaked open like an old friend clearing its throat, and there it was, my quiet cathedral of paranoia. Row after row of plastic tubs, bankers' boxes, and obsolete hardware stacked like crypts in a forgotten mausoleum. Power cables coiled like snakes. Notebooks labeled by year, system, incident, a dusty network rack housing 2 servers I'd pulled from rotation after the 13 breach scare, one of them still humming faintly, connected to a trickle charger and a dedicated Verizon line I'd kept paying for out of pocket. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The light flickered on overhead, motion-triggered, yellow and soft. I stood there a long time, not angry, just heavy. I'd spent my life preparing for disasters, drafting protocols, running fire drills no one showed up for, building fail-safes that would never be thanked, only blamed if they failed. And now the worst-case scenario had started ticking, and I was the only one alive who knew what it meant. I opened box 7C, pulled out a spiral-bound notebook from 2013. Inside, sketches of the original Dead Man architecture. Signal chains, failure escalation trees, manual override paths. At the back, a Polaroid I'd taped in of my cat, Franklin, asleep on the floor next to the recovery server. Written underneath in my own handwriting, they will forget, that's the point. I ran my hand over the paper. This wasn't revenge, not exactly. This was inevitability. A clock tower nobody bothered to wind, now ringing its final chimes. I could stop it. The kill switch was in here in a fireproof bag labeled IF, you know. All it would take is one call, one keystroke. I'd built it that way. So even if I died, the system would forgive itself. But I didn't. I just sat down on the old office chair I'd stashed there, crossed my legs, and pulled out my thermos. Watched the LED blink, once every 4 seconds, still alive for now. Friday started with a Slack message from Marcus that simply read, "Ignore the backup failure logs. Known issue, working on modernization." Underneath it, a screenshot of a pie chart labeled System Health, 82%, as if coloring something green made it real. But in the background, things were crumbling. It began subtle. The overnight cron job that verified incremental backups didn't complete, then a checksum mismatch on the East Coast file mirror. Someone flagged it in Jira. Marcus closed the ticket within 10 minutes. Redundant flag. System is evolving, like a tumor. Denise wasn't there to see it in person. She was 87 miles away in a cabin she'd rented under an alias, a place with no neighbors and spotty cell coverage on purpose. But the system found her. Not because it missed her, but because that's what it was built to do. When the core heartbeat failed, secondary protocols began pinging the outer shells, redundant monitoring nodes she'd planted like digital landmines, hidden in obscure subnets no one had touched in years. It lit up her terminal like candles at a vigil. First ping, mirror a mismatch. Second ping, rsync fail on 4 nodes. Third, heartbeat override 01 initializing. Each came with a timestamp, a path, and an audio cue she'd set to play through her earphones, an old WAV file of her cat meowing once. Franklin, the ghost in her machine, she didn't smile. She didn't flinch. She sipped her tea, pulled the wool blanket tighter around her shoulders, and began taking notes. Calm, focused, detached in the way only someone who's planned for collapse can be. She wasn't rooting for the fall, she just knew how to read gravity. Back at the office, chaos was blooming like mold under the drywall. The junior sysadmin Michael, fresh out of community college and still calling her Miss Denise when he thought no one was listening, put in his resignation. He didn't say why, but his desk was empty by noon. His ticket history showed 5 closed alerts, all marked user error, no further action. One of them was a cascading RAID sync failure. In response, Marcus posted a gif of a raccoon pushing a laptop off a table and captioned it, "When dead weight gets offended." 3 more techs followed within a week. One didn't even collect their last paycheck. The rest of the team started running from fire to fire because everything Marcus touched either caught fire or disappeared. Payroll servers began showing strange discrepancies. Front-end services on the client portal slowed to a crawl. An executive assistant filed a ticket because the time-off system showed her as a temp hire with 0 accrued hours, despite 10 years of service. The help desk forwarded the issue to Marcus. He replied, probably a sync delay. Reboot HR, Denise saw it all. Not through admin dashboards or corporate VPNs, they were already decaying. She watched through the old shells, command line sentinels coded in the days before Jira, before Slack, before everything needed to be collaborative. Her screens didn't look pretty, but they told the truth, and the truth was simple. The system was dying, not because it was old, but because no one respected what kept it alive. It wasn't outdated code or fragile architecture. It was neglect, willful ignorance. Ego. Denise had written comments in those scripts for a reason. Not poetic ones, not desperate warnings. Just cold, clear truths. # do not delete this call, trust me. Hash this runs cleanup for the secondary log buffer. Hash yes, it looks useless. It's not. Marcus had deleted most of those files 2 weeks ago. She'd watched the commit logs from her encrypted shell. 3 files deleted, each one a blood vessel cut. Now the system was bleeding. And Denise? She closed her terminal, stood up, stretched. Her joints cracked like old hinges. Then she smiled, not out of joy, out of recognition. This was the moment the architects always saw coming. The one they were never thanked for. Entropy, dressed in a suit, holding a clipboard, calling itself progress. The payload dropped on a Monday morning because of course it did. Mondays are for disasters disguised as progress. Marcus had bragged in the all-hands about cutting a lean deal with an offshore vendor to rework the backend. Modernize the database architecture, he called it. Rip out the old cruft. The same cruft that had kept payroll running, client accounts intact, and HR files tied to actual human names. The update pushed at 3:12 a.m. Eastern. By 7:46 a.m., the help desk was flooded with calls. By 8:05 a.m., payroll locked up entirely, employees logged in to find their pay history wiped clean. Zero balances, negative accruals. For some, their accounts showed they owed the company money. The client portal went next, logins failed, then reverted, then showed gibberish instead of account data. One client called in furious, claiming their customer dashboard displayed a child's birthday party photo album. It wasn't theirs. Then HR vanished. Files, reviews, onboarding flows, all gone. Employee IDs were set to null. Anyone who tried to clock in got flagged as deceased. Internally, panic hit like a flash flood. Executives screamed down the hallways. Marcus locked himself in a meeting room with his laptop, furiously typing commands into the console like he could resurrect trust with brute force and bravado. Meanwhile, somewhere far from the fluorescent-lit chaos, Denise sat cross-legged on a shag rug in her cabin's loft, staring at a monitor lit only by the glow of a vintage terminal shell. Her logs unfolded like dominoes. Database replicate sync fail, cache flush attempt. Fail authhub 01, unreachable, DR trigger init. Phase 3 engaged the system wasn't crashing. It was defending itself. Years ago, Denise had built in defensive logic, fail-safes that would seal off parts of the infrastructure if certain inconsistencies were detected. Not to punish, not to destroy, just to contain the rot. And now the rot was everywhere. She took a sip of her cold coffee. Her hands didn't shake. Her breathing was steady. One more alert pinged across her screen, a heartbeat from the mirrored backup in Oslo. Still intact, still isolated, still loyal. She entered her credentials into an old VPN, the kind the company had sunsetted 5 years back. She'd kept it alive in the background, quiet, like everything she did. The dashboard blinked to life, 7 toggles, each labeled in that specific, methodical shorthand she'd always used. QTY04 payload shunt, DR silo gate 1, memcl offsite, and then dead center kill chain init. It pulsed a soft amber, waiting, not demanding, just available. Her cursor hovered over it. Clicking that toggle wouldn't crash anything. That part had already begun. But it would lock the system into descent, no recovery, no rollback, no patch fixes duct taped over the data breach. Would tell the machine, this isn't a failure. This is war. She didn't click, she just sat, watching. Somewhere, a junior tech, maybe Michael's replacement, maybe just some poor kid trying to survive day 3, frantically paged through an old documentation folder that had somehow survived Marcus's purge. Buried inside, a printed sheet marked in blue pen with a note Denise had written years ago during a brown bag lunch training nobody attended. Landline stays plugged in. If it doesn't, bad things escalate. You won't see it at first, but they will come. The tech looked around, panicked. Who's Denise? No one in the room answered, because no one knew, and Denise? She closed the terminal window. Let the toggle pulse. She'd built the system to ask before it burned, but she'd also built it to remember when no one listened. By Tuesday morning, the house of cards had collapsed into a landfill fire. The coup, Gerald Wilcox, man who once congratulated Denise on her decades of quiet excellence and then forgot her name in front of a vendor, finally realized they weren't dealing with a hiccup. They were in free fall. Payroll had missed cycle. Federal compliance pings were bouncing. A major healthcare client froze all contracts, citing integrity concerns. Investors started dialing into emergency calls. One board member reportedly asked if they'd been hacked by a foreign state. Marcus tried to say yes, but no one was buying it anymore. The failover site, meant to kick in during exactly this kind of scenario, was dead. No ping, no boot, no heartbeat. The last log entry on the server read, primary lost waiting for authorized restoration. It had been stuck there for 18 hours. No one could even find the token to override it. And suddenly, silence gave way to legal. Legal, who always arrived too late with too little understanding. They pulled audit logs, they read code comments. They interviewed the skeleton crew of IT folks who hadn't rage quit yet. One brave intern muttered something about a phone Denise told us not to touch. Legal raised their eyebrows. Finally, at 1:17 p.m., a new email hit Denise's inbox. Subject, urgent, system down, please help. From Wilcox at Companidomain Body, Denise. You're experiencing a critical outage across all core systems. We've exhausted internal options and believe you may be uniquely positioned to assist. We understand this situation is unusual, but we're asking, as a company and as people, if you could please help us restore functionality. We are prepared to compensate for your time and expertise. Please respond as soon as possible. Respectfully, Gerald Wilcox, Chief Operating Officer. There was no we made a mistake. No, we shouldn't have let him gut your systems. Just that brittle corporate panic, wrapped in empty formality and desperation cologne. Denise read it in the warm quiet of her cabin, slippers on, cat asleep beside her keyboard. The fire crackled. Outside, the pines stood silent under a light drizzle. She didn't smirk, didn't scream finally to the heavens. She just clicked it open, scanned every word, paused it uniquely positioned to assist. Her cursor hovered over reply, then drifted away. She closed the tab. Back in HQ, Marcus was having a visible come apart. Red in the face, pacing between the war room and the server bay like a deranged Roomba, throwing buzzwords at the walls to see what stuck. This is a DNS thing. It's a bad push from the vendor. There's a 0-day vulnerability somewhere. At one point, he yelled, "This isn't my fault. No one told me we had a backup site in Delaware." Someone told him that wasn't even the right state. Meanwhile, Gerald quietly ordered the company card unlocked for Denise. Legal prepped a temporary consulting contract, triple her old rate. The CFO asked if flowers were appropriate. HR started digging through her exit paperwork to find a phone number. There wasn't one, just a line in the comments of a legacy script that someone finally noticed. The system is maintained by Denise J. If you're reading this, something went very wrong. No one could explain who had deleted that script 2 weeks prior. No one needed to. They already knew. Wednesday opened with a headline on the industry feed. Mid-tier SaaS firm loses Fed contract amid system failure, SEC audit incoming. Gerald saw it on his tablet during the emergency strategy call and just whispered, "Shit." The client wasn't just a client. It was the client. Department of Health Services. 7-figure annual contract. Gone. Cancelled overnight with a 2-sentence email that included the word irreparable. Compliance alerts rolled in like tidewater. Data retention violations, payroll inconsistency, flags credential mismanagement. The only thing more broken than the systems was the company's credibility. By noon, legal had called in an external audit team, a quiet crew of forensic IT specialists with tired eyes and clipboards that didn't shake. They weren't here to fix anything. They were here to build the autopsy. The lead investigator, a woman named Raina who spoke only when necessary, sat in a dark conference room combing through the old codebase, backups, and admin logs. Her team came across a backup branch in cold storage, last updated in 2017, labeled DR Heartbeat Failover Tree. Buried inside was a markdown file with a single-line intro. This should never be removed unless you understand why it exists. Beneath it, warnings, flowcharts, escalation paths. And then, screenshots of the toggle dashboard, password hashes, remote access chains keyed to a single administrator. Denise J. The file was marked as deprecated in Marcus's cleanup commit. The timestamp was 5:22 p.m., 14 days prior. Comment, obsolete junk, purging. Raina didn't blink. She flagged it and kept scrolling. Another log surfaced, a failover attempt timestamped for early Tuesday morning, 3:16 a.m. System attempted to initiate backup cluster spin-up. Denied. Why? Because the script responsible for passing the failover flag had failed to execute. Why that? Someone had renamed the trigger file from init trigger sh to init trigger sh. A single dash, one character, enough to break the chain. Raina highlighted it in red, looked up at Gerald. This was intentional. Gerald paled. Intentional sabotage, she shrugged. Negligent at best. But whoever did it didn't test dependencies. Or didn't care. They found other traces, breadcrumb comments Denise had left across the codebase over the years. Not frantic, not defensive, just facts. Leave this file alone unless you want to manually rebuild payroll tables. If this cron job stops, HR syncs will desync from internal identity records. The heartbeat script requires the landline voltage to initialize. No, really. Marcus had deleted them all. Everyone. Denise didn't need to see the report to know this. She'd been watching the collapse in real time like a geologist observing the slow slip of tectonic plates, each tremor logged, each oversight cataloged. She sat on the cabin's porch that afternoon, watching rain paint trails down the pine railing, her cat stretched beside her, half asleep. Her inbox remained quiet. No follow-up emails, no desperate voicemails, just silence. That in itself was an admission. Back at HQ, Marcus had been escorted from the building, not officially fired yet, but relocated pending investigation. He left with no boxes, no goodbyes, just his phone clutched like a lifeline, muttering about entrenched legacy systems sabotaging modern infrastructure. In the break room, someone muttered, "Legacy didn't sabotage you, man. It just survived you." And Denise? She didn't laugh. She just sat with her tea, her terminal closed, the ocean of alerts behind her now static. They removed her phone, they cut the wire, but she was the current. The sky cracked open in ribbons of orange and violet as the tide crept up the sand. Denise sat cross-legged on a driftwood log, a thermos of coffee steaming beside her, laptop humming quietly in the damp morning air. Her hoodie hung loose off one shoulder. Her bare feet were half buried in the cool grit. No Slack pings, no server alarms, just waves and wind. Then, right on time, 6 o'clock a.m. EST, a single silent process ran. The email was already queued, built into a script she'd embedded years ago inside an innocuous update protocol, one nobody had ever questioned. It only activated after a sustained heartbeat loss paired with a failed failover initiation and 3 denied login attempts on the recovery node. It was named DR Closure Dispatch SH. It executed cleanly. A dozen emails hit executive inboxes at once: COO, CFO, legal, compliance, even a shared HR account. Each with a subject line written in cold, motionless finality, system autopsy, avoidable failure chronology inside. Screenshots of the deleted legacy scripts, timestamps of failover blockage source diffs, highlighting the exact one-character file name error, audio clips of Marcus dismissing warnings, a spreadsheet labeled ignored alerts and their consequences, a full commit log tracing every act of erasure, and then at the bottom, a zipped file. Legacy cost zip encrypted, but with instructions on how to open it. Inside, if they dared, was everything. The original architecture for the disaster recovery stack, a full diagnostic map of the remaining shell infrastructure, a safe reset path, Denise's notes, her old credentials now expired, and the cold, immutable truth: they could have avoided all of it if they'd just asked. Back at HQ, monitors glowed in stunned silence. Gerald clicked through the files, face blanched. Raina skimmed the documentation with visible awe. She built this by hand, she muttered. It's beautiful. In the company Slack, the leadership channel blew up. Who else got that email? CFO, me, it's real. Legal, we are in deep exposure. Marcus, this is manipulated. She's weaponizing obsolete architecture. He kept typing, but mid-sentence, the system cut him off. A silent backend command executed. One Denise had hard-coded into a dormant admin credential, buried behind a permissions group named DR Locksmith. Marcus's name vanished from the channel. His icon grayed out, disconnected, mid-keystroke, no fanfare, no warning, just gone. And Denise? She sipped her coffee, bitter, burned, perfect. The wind picked up, her laptop screen dimmed. She didn't close it. She just let it time out naturally, the way sunsets happen without anyone asking for permission. She glanced at the small table beside her. On it, plugged into a makeshift battery pack duct taped to an old UPS unit, sat her desk phone. Beige, boxy. Cord curled like a sleeping snake, it vibrated once. Not a call, just a heartbeat. A signal, quiet and loyal, still pulsing every 6 hours like clockwork. Still connected. Still beating. She didn't touch it. She didn't need to. Legacy didn't die, it simply waited. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.